Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Whyatt. I'm the salesman part of the title. Each week, I sit down with CEOs and entrepreneurs to discuss and dissect their journeys, filled with triumphs, challenges, and some good old-fashioned business wisdom. Get ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired as we dig into leadership, strategy, sales, marketing, and everything in between. This is the CEO and the Salesman podcast. Let's get on with the show. And welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast, where we interview CEOs of technology businesses to learn what they've figured out throughout over the years of being in the trenches and running real life businesses and trying to scale. Today, we're joined by Sean Rennick, the CEO of Nexussoft. G'day, Sean. How are you going?
Hey, Matt. How you going? Great to be with you.
Good. Thanks, mate. Good to see you. Mate, we've known each other for a long time, so this is probably a bit more of a relaxed conversation, but still the same format. Mate, what I wanted to start with is, you started your career working with Telstra, and I don't know, sorry to bring that up, but mate, what have you taken from one of the biggest companies in Australia and through to your current role now? I mean, I know it's probably been 20 or 30 years since you worked for them, but are there still lessons and ideas, thoughts and ways of operating that you've brought forward, or have you actually rejected all of it and gone completely the other way?
No, it's actually interesting. I had a bit of a funnier career before then. I was actually a radio announcer, so I gave that up after about a year in the game. It was just not working for me. So I got a job in Telstra in the customer service team. In the business accounts section, and I was with Telstra for 14 years and did a variety of things. I think one of the wonderful things that I found working for Telstra back then in the mid 90s through to 2008 when I left was that there was an opportunity to do so many different things, and I didn't realise, I suppose, what I was being exposed to back then half as much as what I do now. And look, I started in accounts, and then I went over to information management, where we were looking after the strategy and standards for all of the data that was in Telstra systems, which back in 2000 was sort of a bit of a thing, but now there's an entire, building full of people doing that. So that was a bit sort of cutting edge. And then I went into marketing, in B2B marketing, working with customers in regional Australia. And that's where I sort of finished up after 14 years. But one of the things that I have taken out of the likes of Telstra is that the things around you are always going to change. When I first started in Telstra, there was 96,000 people working at Telstra, and by the time I finished, there was 38,000. So every year, you essentially had to pitch for your job, whether that was, regardless of what you were doing. Every year there were retrenchments and people leaving and restructuring. But also that I think one of the things that small business, in my experience since leaving Telstra, that I've really sort of tried to go back to is that it doesn't matter how big or small your business is, you need processes of actually what do you do as a business, who you are, what you do, what's the value you provide, and how do you go about doing it, and how can you make that repeatable? And I think even the most complex job. And I was listening to the podcast with the CEO of Kepler Analytics, who came from the Air Force and then went to GM, and then is now running a medium-sized business. When he was working at GM, being an account manager for Qantas, there's still a process you've got to follow. There's still a structure to what you've got to do. And it doesn't matter how big or small the business is. The sooner you can actually sort of get your head around that, I think the better chance you've got of making a repeatable, scalable, profitable, saleable business.
Yeah, man, I've absolutely found that in the last 6 months. I've been, I have 90-day sprints in the business, and the last 90-day sprint, which has taken 6 months, is to process, proceduralize, and systemize significant portions of the business, and it's just been really interesting over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've been I work from home. I sort of wandered downstairs, and my wife also works from home, Terry, and going, I'm not that busy today. And it feels a bit weird. It feels a bit off-putting. Well, actually, she goes, well, that's great because you've put all these things in place. You've got project managers and amazing people working with you now. So isn't that the goal? And it's quite funny. I actually found myself really thinking, oh, geez, it's not going well because I'm not busy.
No, it's and look, I left when I left Telstra in 2008. I went to work for three medium-sized businesses. One in petrol pricing information. I went to work for a medico-legal independent assessments organisation. Then I went to work for an IT managed service provider, all in sort of like commercial manager style roles.
Right.
And all of them really sort of struck me as not having repeatable processes that essentially, everyone had to learn. Everyone had to learn the business and the value of what the business provided. It was a new experience for every customer. There wasn't really sort of much stuff a new experience for every staff member. It wasn't really anything something could point to saying, well, this is who we are and this is what we do. And here's the list of things and how you go about doing them. And, when I bought a Telstra partner in 2013 with the idea that there was a need for IT and telecommunications managed services under one roof. We had that business for 8 years. I learned an awful lot about running a small business and the idea of running a business, which, this is simple. I've done this before, through to it's your own money on the table and you've got to pay for wages every fortnight. And do we have enough money to make payroll? And that 8 years and transforming that business into something which was worth a lot of money when we sold it, that was my MBA. That was my real life experience, and sort of got me into the position, having sold the business at the age of 50, being able to work for innovative organisations as the the COO or the general manager or the CEO. And I think it's a hard thing to replicate, that owning your own business and finding a way and creating an idea of what you're actually trying to do with a business and achieving that. That's the best bit that I've learned in my career, I think, is what it's actually really like to have your own money on the table.
Well, mate, I've only ever run my own businesses. It's a completely different experience. I started my first business when I was 22, and only ever eaten what I've killed. Before that, I was a salesperson and pretty much commission only. So I've only ever eaten what I've killed, and so and it's interesting meeting people who have had a long career working for large businesses, the exposure they've had to the world versus what I've got, and how they think about money and how they think about budgeting and those types of things. It's fascinating too. And there's no right way. I mean, there's as many people who are wildly successful in both sectors. But what I find is that it's quite an interesting balance constantly of conservatism. It's my money, I've got to manage it, but also positivity. Well, I'm going to bet on this idea or bet on that idea, and I've done that a few times. So, mate, what lessons, I guess, with all the various different businesses, what lessons do you reckon other tech CEOs or CEOs who are watching this should be thinking about or should take away?
Look, I think that the hardest thing, so I've been with Nexussoft since April last year, and I met the owners back in 2010 when I was working for a company called Medilaw, and Nexussoft bid to build a system to manage the Medilaw operations, and that system was still in use up until only 12 months ago. The thing that I learned in Nexussoft, I think, and the thing that I suppose that's the most difficult bit is who you are and what you do, and distilling that down into really coherent, who are your target markets? Because of course I put my marketing hat back on. Everybody is not your customer. And the sooner that you realize that, the better. You need to be able to think about who is my ideal client? How am I going to engage with them? How am I going to bring them along on the journey to the point where they might want to buy something from me? But the hardest thing in any job for a leader, I think, is to distill that who we are and what we do down into something which can actually be something you can build a plan off. And I don't think it's something you can rush, because if you get that piece wrong, then you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes. And I think it takes you 6 months or 12 months to really distill who we are, what do we do, what are we going to try and achieve? And I think once you can, that first 12 months is really challenging every day, all of those assumptions about that, to build a North Star, to build a purpose, to build something that to lay a foundation that you can actually build off. And I think that's, again, I think in small business, I think business owners will oftentimes have an idea, but they don't keep going back and refining and distilling that who we are and what we do. And I think that's where business owners fail, I suppose, in a transition to being an owner manager to being a manager of people and resources, and sort of moving back into sort of more like a shareholder type arrangement, where you've got people who know what they're doing and running the business, and you're not having to be consulted every day on, oh boss, what do we do now? What's next in the process?
Yeah, cool. I'm reading a strategy book at the moment, it's How to Win, and they talk about where to play and how they're going to win. And it's the story of the Procter and Gamble business, and how it went. Obviously, it was always reasonably, or has been reasonably large for a long time, but how they're able to take certain segments and then choose a where to play portion, and then how they're going to win in that place. And they're continually having these conversations about where to play, how to win, and in doing that, they're able to really identify the products and product lines that they're going to succeed in, but also identify the ones that they need to, kill off.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a clear where to play and how to win strategy. That actually book was recommended to me by another podcast guest, Klaus Bartosz. It's actually a really good book.
Yeah. And sometimes that's really hard. I think there's a lot of business owners who've got legacy is the wrong word, who've got mindset and conviction into things that are no longer relevant to the market. Or you're either you're rarely, well, you're rarely. There might be a way that you've done things in the past. I think when I was working for the petrol information company, there was a product at the time that they had which had a list of all of the service stations in Australia, and it just was that database wasn't actually selling. There was no one who wanted it.
Right.
Now, fast forward 15 years, and that's a different story. It's a different story again, because the market is now sort of needing that type of information. But at that point in time, it was too early. And the thing is, do you keep on investing in something that's actually not what the market wants, because eventually they might want it, or do you park it? And the thing is that if you're the owner and you've essentially invested a whole heap of your personal energy and everything in something which is either too early for the market or is just not what the market needs, then you've got to be able to say, look, I think I might have misread it here. We need to park it. We need to focus on other things, because there'll always be opportunities to develop new ideas. But letting go of ideas that aren't going to fly, or letting go of ideas that aren't ready, that the market's not ready for yet, that is always difficult. And, I suppose you've got to remain agile enough, and certainly working in Telstra every year, the ideas you come up with every year, they get reset every year, because everyone's looking to restructure and collapse this and reduce that. So don't be too attached to the tactics that you use to go after the market, but make sure your strategy and your purpose is right, and that it's something that customers want.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So how do you think about strategy? How do you think about when it comes to trying to address, because you're now CEO of Nexussoft, how do you think about business strategy now? Now, you've been involved in all these different businesses. What's your current approach?
Look, funnily enough, I quite enjoy sales, but I remember thinking to myself back in the mid-90s, I don't ever want to try and sell something that I don't believe in. I couldn't sort of bring myself to actually get excited about that. Working for Telstra and being in sort of sales or customer service or marketing roles, I was very happy to that, because I believed in what Telstra did, and I believed that it was Australia's national carrier and had a tremendous reputation and history that was worthy selling. And I think with working in businesses now, the strategy's got to be something that you think the customers are going to love, or that you think the customers are going to find very valuable. And consequently, it's going to be something that you're very happy putting your name to, or something that you're very happy to to go out there and pitch to the market, because you know that for the right customers, it's going to be great for them. And
Right.
and I think, and you and I have talked a lot about who are the customers that, the process that we go through. Part of our process is essentially an assessment of whether we think what we can do can deliver an outcome for your business. And our process is that's a consulting piece which takes a couple of days. And if you as a customer are not prepared to invest in that, that's okay, but we're not prepared to play anymore. Our process is that we have a discovery workshop where we outline all of what we do in terms of costs and the value that we bring to the equation, and essentially half write your business case for you. But if you're not ready to do that, that's okay. But that's as far as the conversation goes. And having that confidence that for the customers that we do this process for, it works and it's right. Having that confidence and being comfortable with that, I think, indicates whether it's an indicator of whether you've got your strategy right, and and whether customers are valuing what you do.
Do you get much pushback on that two-step process?
No. We've it's interesting. Our hit rate with discovery workshops so far is 100%. And if a customer's not prepared, I'm talking to a customer at the moment in WA who's sort of not particularly interested in the, wants us to give them a quote, and without the discovery workshop, it's like we can't. We'd be guessing. We can't give you the quote, but now I can look at this from two ways. Either they don't get it, or I haven't communicated effectively enough so that they get it. But if the outcome is that they don't want to proceed with the discovery workshop, that's okay. But I'm just going to put them on a nurturing cycle and sort of talking about all of the good reasons why we do it. And if the customer's not ready, or if they don't want to, that's okay. But clearly, it's not going to work. It's not going to work with a relationship with our organisation, because that's the foundation that we have to.
And I guess if a customer's not willing to spend $10,000-$15,000 on understanding their problem accurately and then being able to scope it out precisely, they're probably not going to spend 10 times that on your software, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And and what we do is bespoke. It is for particular types of customers who need to solve the types of problems that we're good at solving. It's, if our average tenure with customers is more than 8 years, so we know if we can't get the foundation right, then it's not going to last 8 plus years. And look, in the software game, if you're using software for 8+ years, it must be doing a good job.
Yeah. How does it keep being relevant?
Well, what we do in our business is we include continuous improvement of the system as part of the subscription agreement. So the software is always adapting and evolving with your business as you grow and change. And certainly the company that I worked for back in 2010, Medilaw, we did a case study on them where they doubled their sales, increased the number of suppliers they worked with, did it with the same number of staff. And there is no other way they could have done it other than by having a system which delivered exactly what they want to manage all of their work, but then was continuously evolved and improved over a period of 10 years to keep adjusting and adapting to the requirements of Medilaw in the market. So,
because it's not really just, you're not just selling software and walking away, are you? You're actually continuously thinking about, as a business analyst and business improvement opportunities, and then modifying the software along the way.
Yeah, and for some businesses that work in dynamic environments or want to sort of have the ability to be able to evolve what they offer to their customers, having that continuously improved software as a cornerstone of their business operations it's their secret weapon. And I think in any business that's operating, you need to be able to adjust to what's happening in the market, and how you do that, it is part of one of your core competencies. But for some businesses, we just make really, really neat software that fits exactly what they need, and that continuous improvement process just means that there's predictability. That there's no 50 grand here, 100 grand here for making tweaks and changes. It's all part of the service. I think for us going forward, what's really important is that we might be a software business at the moment, but in reality, we're a software and services business. And as software gets easier to write and more sophisticated with AI tools and all kinds of things happening, it's going to be the service that we deliver on top of the software, which is going to be where a lot of our intellectual property is going to sit. And I suppose again, the thing that really makes me excited about what we're going to be doing in the future is that we will be able to deliver to a medium-sized business an enterprise-level experience of software and business analysis and improvement at a price which is, comparable to one or two good staff members. But the difference that we can make is well beyond that, and we've proven that time and time again with our customers.
Yeah, cool. Very good. Interesting approach. Now, just to moving on to other areas. So tell me, where do we've talked about how your experience and what lessons you've taken. Where do you see software and or technologies getting it wrong? Where do you think, are there any particular areas you see that can be solved?
There's two things. There's two things that I think are wrong. So the first one is, I think that off the shelf software is going to become more and more prevalent and more fine tuned in what it's doing. That will also create a problem that businesses will be forced to either do things the way the software says it should be done, or remember the difference between how you want to do it and how the software is portraying it. And again, for innovative businesses that are trying to create repeatability, scalability, and quick familiarity with staff as your staffing change, is that having to remember the difference between how the software does it and how you want to do it. That's your key person risk right in the middle. And off-the-shelf software is always going to have limitations. But for some businesses, the limitations of off-the-shelf software will always be okay, because what they do is not sufficiently different from what their competitors do or what the industry does. Where we sit is that we actually provide a solution for businesses who are a bit different, who don't want to do things just the way the rest of the industry does it, because that's what their customers value. And for them, off-the-shelf software is always going to have limitations, and it will create problems, and you won't get the productivity dividend that software has sort of always esoterically promised over the years. To actually have software which delivers productivity gains, it has to fit your requirements precisely, and it has to always fit your requirements over time. And that they would be the two biggest things that I think the software industry does poorly. The other thing that I really don't understand, I was listening to some fellow the other day talk about a Salesforce integrator here in Brisbane that does 35 new deployments a year. And yet it's basically they do the deployment for the customer and they don't talk to the customer again for 6 months. The busiest time that we talk to our customers is in the first 6 months, because plenty of times there's things that they don't get quite right, or they don't really sort of, we build them a precise system and they go, we thought we did it that way, but we actually do it this way. Can you change this around? We go, yeah, sure, no problem. I think in the last customer deployment we did in the first 6 months, we did 200 changes for them in the first 6 months.
Wow.
Now that was partially because they told us what they thought they did, and it turns out that they do things differently. But also, we can start. We chase down the nuance of every step of the process, and it's exactly what the customer wants. And again, for that customer who does things differently from the rest of the industry, that's what they wanted.
Yeah,
and
right.
for businesses who do things just like everybody else, there's going to be plenty of off-the-shelf software options out there, and that's okay. But for the customers who do things differently and really want to capitalize on their difference, that's where we play. And I think that's, the fact that we include continuous improvement of software as part of our offering, I can't find anybody else out there in the world that does that, apart from a mob called Palantir, and they are an enormous S&P 500 software consulting business that really do solve some complex stuff. But we do that for medium-sized businesses.
Right. Oh, we'll get you there. You'll get there.
That's it. We don't need to be the biggest. We just want to do what we do and do it well.
Got it. So, mate, in regards to CEO, what do you see as the job of the CEO?
It's funny, actually. So So I'm the first CEO for Nexussoft. I'm running the business now. The owners needed to step back for a number of reasons, and I think that my number one responsibility is to preserve and protect the health and solvency of the business. Everything else comes from that. The shareholder dividends, the opportunity for staff, everything comes as a result of the business being healthy and in good shape and match fit. I think the other so from then, once you've crafted who we are and what we do, then it's about creating a team environment where, number one, everyone wants to turn up. I think when Megan and I had the business between 2013 and 2021, we decided that our number one challenge was create an environment where people want to turn up. And if we could do that, then any problem we came across, half of them could be solved by just having people who wanted to be there. So I think, creating the right team environment where there's opportunity and evolution of roles and people have got a chance to develop and grow. It doesn't mean that everyone's always going to stay with you forever. And in some respects, if people outgrow what the business can offer, that's okay. But, sometimes the business can't grow fast enough for the people that are in it. But that's okay. Give people an opportunity to develop and be ready for their next role, whatever that might be. And then I suppose the challenge as the manager of the business is to make sure that the business is as best possible. The business can provide opportunity and potential for development for team members. If you can do those two things, then you can pretty much knock over any problem.
Got it. How do you think about team when it comes to training and or upskilling?
Yeah, I've always said to people in the teams that I've managed that your professional development is your responsibility, and you're the one who needs to think about what you want to do. I can certainly give you ideas and say, well, look, we're going to probably need these skills in the future, and if you're interested in doing that, then then there's your opportunity. But ultimately, and I've certainly viewed this for myself, that it's my responsibility, what my professional development is, and I need to be the architect of that. And so long as what I want to do aligns with the business that I'm working in, then that's a happy situation to be in. But if what I want to do is, if I want to start making handbags, that doesn't really sort of align with the requirements of being a CEO. It might be what I feel like doing, and might be what I'm passionate about, but that's not the company's fault that I want to make handbags and it needs me to run a business. And I think it has to be a two-way street. And I think for your team members, it's just about, again, if you can create a business which is interesting and people want to turn up, and if you can create a business that provides opportunity for people to develop and grow, then that can be a happy hunting ground for everybody. And I think one of the big challenges these days with staffing is that it is very difficult to find good quality people. So you've got to make sure you pay right, you've got to make sure you treat people right, and you've got to make sure that you give them a purpose for turning up. And if you can't do that, then you don't have to look in my book, you don't have to look very far to find out where the problems are. It'll be one of those three things.
Yeah, cool. Got it. And so when it comes to your day-to-day, how do you spend your days as a CEO?
So I spend a little bit of time sort of on the business development side, and at the moment I have been following the guidance of your LinkedIn outreach program, which is going well. We actually landed our first customer from that LinkedIn outreach program, so I contacted them in August last year, and 10 months later we signed a north of $1 million deal with that customer, which started from a LinkedIn outreach program. And so I spend a bit of time on that most days. I do, at the moment, we are sort of formulating a 3 and 5 year business plan with myself and the owners. So I'm spending a lot of time on that at the moment. I'm careful about monitoring the cadence of our business development activity so that we're not creating more opportunity than what we can deal with. And I'm spending a bit of time nurturing existing customers in our sales process. Because again, the principle is that we will work with customers at their pace. So I've just got to find enough customers to talk to so they can sort of all form in an orderly queue in the, through the pipeline, so to speak. And then it's mostly about just keeping up to date with what my team are up to, and if they've got any roadblocks, if they've got any need any advice or any guidance. I'm not a technical person. I'm technically minded, but I'm not a software developer. So, I have used ChatGPT to get it to build me a piece of Java code that actually could generate a random number. But that's about it.
Right.
So, I do understand how databases work thanks to my time in Telstra and the information management team. But how you actually build a web app that, encompasses a process for a customer, I don't know how to do it, but my guys do. So I'm spending a lot of time with them, sort of understanding what we're working on. And then it's about sort of thinking a lot about structure, process, what's the next move? Because it is a little bit like a game of chess. And you're playing against everything else, and you've just got to work out what the next move is. And then, okay, well, we can't start that bit until we get that bit done. Sort of like Tetris and a Chinese puzzle box all rolled into one.
How do you balance family?
I'm very fortunate that Nexussoft is very respectful of people, of their employees' personal and private time. I work from home, so the commute is 3 seconds to walk down the hallway.
Yeah.
That gives you a surprising amount of extra time in your day, and compare that to the first job that I got after we sold the business was working for a mob on the Gold Coast. But I was driving to the Gold Coast 3 days a week, so that was 9 hours of my week that was just consumed with sitting in a car. Now, admittedly, I could make some phone calls and I could listen to some podcasts and stuff like that, but it's not the same as being able to spend time with your spouse. It's not the same as being able to spend time with your daughter and son-in-law and your grandson, and going for a walk and clearing your head. So, there's been great things about working from home. There's also been some not so great things about working from home, but I'm very fortunate that I can start work around 8 o'clock in the morning and I can finish work around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that is pretty much the expectation. My expectations are done.
I've been so after I sold off a tech business and pretended to retire in Bali for a year. When I say pretended, didn't really thought I was going to take some time off, but just opened my computer up on day one and kept working.
Yeah.
And so therefore I've been working from home or working not in an office environment for more than 12 years or 10 years now. I'm just looking at the date, 24. Yep. What do you think are the downsides of working from home? I mean, we all know the positives. What are the downsides?
Yeah. Look, when we had the business, because of course we had the business during COVID, so we were an IT managed service provider. Now, I went to work every day during COVID because we're still getting deliveries. We had all of the guys working from home, by one other fellow who basically said, I live in a 1-bedroom flat and I'm not working from home. You can go to hell. And I said, that's fine. Come into the office. So the two of us went into the office every day. We had a 180 square meter office. He sat on one side of the office and I sat on the other side. It's just that personal connection. I feel that you can achieve great things if you're a team that actually gets along well. It doesn't mean you all have to be friends, but there's got to be a level of professional courtesy and mutual understanding of what everybody brings to the table. And I think that if you only talk to someone for a few minutes a day via Teams or Zoom or whatever, I just don't think it's very easy to actually build that connection up. That when I was at Telstra, and some very, very interesting people that I worked with, and working from home was a very novel concept. I was actually on a consulting group inside the business that was providing advice around working from home or remote working. And the connection piece, sure, having time where you're uninterrupted and you can get quality work out and all that sort of stuff, that's great. But that's probably 3 or 4 hours of your day. The rest of your day, it's actually working with your colleagues and, collaborating to achieve team outcomes. And I think that Telstra taught me that you can have a lot of very different people in your team from lots of different backgrounds, but coming together with a variety of ideas was truly the superpower. And I think that remote working has also given people the ability to disconnect from their colleagues and to do it pretty much without anybody noticing. I think that the stridency that some people have demonstrated with some of the reports in the media about not wanting to return to the workplace, some of the things or some of the, and again, this is what's been reported, so you've got to make sure it's a balanced view.
Yeah,
But some of the some of the lengths that people are going to avoid going back to the workplace, there's deeper problems there. It's not the fact that they like working from home, it's the fact that they hate working from the office or some variation of it. And I think that's a problem, because if you've got people who are happy to work for your organization, but the idea of going into the workplace is something that they will try everything to avoid, there's something wrong. There's something very wrong.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that, even though I've been working from home for 10 years and loved it, and I've got team members in Sydney and Melbourne and Philippines and Indonesia and everywhere at the moment, I do miss that. I miss that. So I consulted to a company up in Brisbane for 3 days a week for a couple of years, and certainly a challenging environment, very challenging clients. The standard was very, very high in relation to what had to be delivered, and the owners were the smartest guys in the room. So that was always a challenge for somebody like me, who usually skates by on humour and the odd quip here and there. But no, they were good. They were good people, and the challenge was that it was, well, first of all, it was in Brisbane, so it was an hour up and an hour and a half back 3 times a week, so that was a real drag. But I do miss it. I miss that conversation, the pop in, the walk past the office and go, I just had a thought. And then you start, collaborating, as you said. But it's those little bits and pieces that sit there. Because, back in the day, we had, at one stage, we had 2 floors of a building in my software business. Much like yours, we had with probably 40 people on the Gold Coast. We had 30 in Melbourne, but 40 on the Gold Coast in one building over 2 floors. And I could walk, from one part to the next and get 50 different personalities, or 40 different personalities anyway. The only people that really understood me, or I really understood, were the salespeople. Everybody else luckily my wife managed. But no, because she's great at the sort of management, and she was very much the type of leader was about a competence-based leader. Whereas I was the lead singer, I was the inspirational, the ideas-based leader. Whereas half the team, more than actually probably, let's say probably 90% of the people who weren't salespeople, though, I'll make some proclamation about what we're going to do and how we're going to take over the world and all this sort of stuff. And I get probably a Mexican wave of eye rolls across the business, and then luckily Terry would be able to come in and back that up with real plans and real execution and real framework. And we're going to achieve it by this, and she would come back and say, okay, well, let's do this one thing, nail that, do the next thing, nail that, do the next thing. So I've always grown up in an office environment, except for the last 10 or 11 years. It's been a bit it's difficult, and I'm really genuinely considering. Even though the problem is, though, my most trusted team members, my most talented team members, are not on the Gold Coast.
No,
they're in Melbourne and Sydney. So
I think you got to get out. I mean, I try and make sure that I at least get out of the home office at least once a week. And even if that's like, actually tomorrow I'm going to the Gold Coast. There's a talk that I'm going on to on generative AI and use in the workplace and stuff. And it's a drive to the Gold Coast, and someone's going to feed me. So okay, I'll be there. But it's a good opportunity to just get out of the office. And I think I've got 2 of my guys based here in Brisbane. The owners are based on the Sunshine Coast. I've got a guy in Jakarta, and I've got a couple of guys in India. The plan for us in the medium term is that we will have an office. We will have Our guy from Jakarta is going to start coming back to Australia 4 times a year for at least a week. Our guys in India, we're actually going to get them an office that they can work out of. And in Brisbane, as we build out the team on the customer engagement side, we'll be building out people based in Brisbane, and from the developer, the engine room, I suppose, will be based out of Varanasi in northern India. But we're going to have an office back in the city in Brisbane, because it's what our customers would expect for a proper software and continuous improvement business.
Yep.
And it's not really okay for us to just continue to all work from home post-COVID. You've got to there has to be some kind of transition back to a middle ground. Look, I've got no problem with people doing a day or two from home, working from home, because they want to look, particularly with software developers, like, I just don't want to talk to anybody for a whole day, and I crack out some code and away you go. Sure, no problems at all. You don't need to come to the office for that. But how we're actually going to put a plan together to put more structure and process around our continuous improvement offering, that's something people need to be together for that. And one of the things I just think is really interesting is that the culture of Friday afternoon drinks has pretty much been demolished post-COVID. But when I don't think people realise how much fun it is working in the city until you don't work in the city anymore, because you've got a choice of things you can do. You can go and sit in the park, you can go for a walk, you can go and do some shopping or whatever, or and on Friday afternoon you can go and have a couple of responsible drinks with your colleagues, and again foster that sense of camaraderie that, to achieve great things, I think you really do need. But, Friday afternoon drinks apparently aren't a thing anymore. A bit disappointed that by the time we get back into having an office in the city, that everyone's going to want to, nick off at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and that's it.
Disappear. Well, mate, I'll come and have a beer with you.
Good. Jump on the train.
Though. That's the real problem.
No,
right?
jump on the train.
Perfect. Just a light stabbing on the way through, then.
Keeps your wits about you.
Yeah, that's right. Keep your head on a swivel, as they say in the classics.
That's it.
Well, mate, look, thanks very much for catching up with me. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And are there any thoughts, comments, or anything like to leave the listeners with?
Oh, look, no. I think I've shared enough wisdom. I think I've shared enough wisdom for one session, and if I do, it won't have context. And what I love doing is providing a whole backstory to any sort of wisdom I come out with. So no, I think find your North Star. I think that would be the thing that I would say for your business. Find your North Star and then work to continuously improve it and refine it and distill it, and don't stop.
Perfect. Thanks very much, mate. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, Matt. Cheers.